Hello, I am Jim Mason, President of the Colorado Springs School District 11 Board of Education, and I'd like to take a few minutes to welcome each and every one of you back to school year 2018-19. Right up front, there's three things that I'd like to leave with you. First of all, to our students, I would like for you to know and please understand that we have put together all of the resources required to deliver to you the best educational opportunity possible. We will deliver this in a first-class manner, and your requirement is going to be that you fully participate and report to school every day prepared to learn, and we know you will do that. Secondly, I would like to say to the parents and guardians, please know that we have taken measures to ensure that when you send your child to school every day, they will be attending a safe and secure learning environment. We have taken measures to ensure everything is in place to help support our students, our staff and faculty, and you, the parents and the guardians. They're going to be safe. We assure you of that. And finally, to the staff and faculty, we have assembled the best known education professionals around. You are the best. We have provided you with the resources, the training, and the professional development that you will need to be successful. And we know you will be. Please understand that anything you need other than that's not already there, all you have to do is inform us and ask. We will do everything we can to get it for you. In closing, this is just a brief welcome by myself. There will be others who will follow me who will also add their excitement and their enthusiasm for this upcoming school year. We will close with our new superintendent, Mr. Michael Thomas. We know that you will be successful. We're counting on it. We need all of us to work together as a team, as we've always done in the past, to ensure that our children, our students, receive the best education possible and be prepared for a world that the 21st century is developing each and every day. There are unknowns, but our children will be prepared for those unknowns. Thank you very much.
Welcome everyone to the 2018-19 school year. I'm Joe Schott, President of CSEA, and we're looking forward to exciting new opportunities for our district this year. Improved resources as the MLO is implemented, and a vigorous, productive partnership with the board and our new superintendent. It's always exciting, though, to think that we are an organization of thousands of people focused on one thing: enriching the lives of students. We are here to help them develop their potential, to realize the satisfaction of learning, and experience the joy of understanding. We help children grow in power and competence so they can run their own lives as individuals and for themselves within the greater society. This is a moral profession. It takes many forms, for instance, getting kids to school safely and providing food that keeps them going through the day. For teachers, it's fostering the curiosity innate to children, making sure it survives and thrives. That curiosity is a fountain of strength that brought us to the profession as learners and as inspired professionals dedicated to children's success in life. Remember what inspired you and bring that to your students. Know that you are a positive agent, a model that your students watch closely. We are professionals who don't need permission to do what we know is best for kids. And it's not always data cycles or training children to become others' employees. It just might be helping them imagine a world where none of our youth worry about their family's safety or about the next meal. A world where justice prevails. Kids are idealists, after all. So help them dream big dreams worthy of their potential, and help them build the tools to realize those dreams. Let's remember the excitement and optimism that brings us here, and let that drive our kids' learning. Have a great year.
I'm Connie Rogers, President of the Education Support Professionals. I hope everyone had an opportunity for a restful and enjoyable summer break. For the staff and students who get to participate in the wonderful world of teaching and learning, summer break can be revitalizing. It is a chance to recharge our batteries and reboot. Just like rebooting our technology, rebooting ourselves can have so many benefits. One of the definitions in the Cambridge Dictionary reads, "To reboot is to start something again, or do something again in a way that is new and interesting." As a district, we are rebooting. We have a new superintendent who brings us new visions and missions to support our students' success. We also have new funding. The support from our community with the MLO is giving us the opportunity to reboot our district. This will enhance the learning experience for our students by providing updated technology, maintaining our infrastructure with cleaner and safer schools, and offering better and more competitive wages to attract and retain the best support staff, teachers, and administrators. As an ESP Council, we are rebooting. We have a new ESP logo, and we have developed various programs to create more outreach and awareness. So how will you reboot? What are you going to do that is new and interesting this year? Allow me to share some food for thought. This is a great time to start fresh, lift people up, inspire others, treat others how you would like to be treated, and last but not least, lead by example. You never know who's watching. The young people in our care are observing and learning from our words and actions every day. Do something new and interesting. Have a fabulous school year, and welcome back.
Hello, and welcome to what will surely be a fantastic school year at District 11. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeremiah Johnson, your CASACE president, and I would like to take a moment of your time and introduce you to this year's CASACE board. First, our board officers. At Vice President, Jared Welch, Principal of Sabin Middle School. Treasurer, and joining the team for the first year, Holly Brilliant, Title I Director. Secretary is Shayla Sims, Principal of West Middle School. Your individual representatives are Instructional Representative Phoebe Bailey, Director of Educator Effectiveness. High School Representative Kevin Gardner, Principal, Doherty High School. Business Representative Chris Odom, Executive Director of Procurement. Middle School Representative James Nason, Principal, Jack Swigert Aerospace Academy. General Administration Representative Dr. Janine Demi-Smith, Executive Director of EDSS. Elementary School Representative Karen Newton, West Elementary School. IT Representative Devin Watts, Technical Support Operations Specialist. And your at-large representative, Melissa Smead, Director of Learning Resources and Instructional Technology. If you have questions about joining CASACE or being an executive professional, please don't hesitate to call or email any of us. We are here for you. We as a board meet once a month, and each representative briefs the board on important issues or roadblocks that are facing their constituents. Please share with your representatives anything you require support on. We are here for you. If you want to get involved in serving other executive professionals, please reach out or come to our meetings. We would love to have everyone who is interested and can spare the time to participate. At some point this year, you will see communication from your CASACE board regarding an all-executive professional employee function. We are in the early stages of planning, and if you have ideas of what we should do for this event, please reach out and share them with us. One of the best resources we have for support is each other. Please take advantage of the resources that your CASACE board offers. I hope you all have a fantastic and inspiring school year. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael Thomas and I'm your new superintendent here in District 11. I am thrilled to join such an amazing team of educators and look forward to what this year will bring for our students and our families. Today, you will be able to watch several clips that talk a little bit about who I am as a leader, who I am as a person, as well as my vision for a new strategic course moving forward for the years to come. I would also like to share in these videos an opportunity of where we are going to be accountable to our community for the MLO that we've just received, as well as how we can set the conditions for our students and our families to reach their maximum potential.
I want to thank everyone for their dedication and commitment to D11. And if you can't tell, I love being around people, and I love to have fun with folks. We do a lot of work, a lot of hard work, a lot of hours. This is like our second family, right? And so if we can't laugh and play together with the seriousness that we do every day, then it's going to make our jobs even tougher. So please know, Adrian, others, I like to just kind of engage and, have a little fun with everybody. So that's who's in the house here with new folks. And obviously in here we have a lot of our, what I would say, general leadership, or our level 1 leadership. That's the folks who are running all of our academic departments, operations departments, everything through the central office, as well as our building leaders. And so we all are collectively here kind of guiding the ship, if you will. And I know a lot of your staffs are looking to you for that leadership, and I think collectively it's just great to see this sea of awesome folks here this morning and the work that we're going to do. And I'm going to share a little bit about me, so you'll know a little bit about me personally, but also tell you a little bit about how I even came to D11, which I thought would be kind of fun. So I thought I would start off with just a little bit of trivia. Anybody know what that state is? That is the state of Minnesota. This is where I've been born and raised, and I've been trying all my life to get out. And I finally made it. But it's a great place to live, and great place to raise families. We usually rank number 1 or number 2 in the country. However, I think one of our board directors shared with me that Colorado Springs was just recognized by U.S. News and World Report as the best place. So you have inched out Minnesota. So congrats to Colorado Springs. Anybody know what that is? I-25, somebody said. So I will tell you, the joke that I've been hearing since I've come here is that because Michael's from Minnesota, we're never going to have snow days. That might be true. This is what closes schools in Minnesota. But yes, we get a lot of snow. And it's a lot. And this was an unseasonable time this past year. I think we had 15 inches that unseasonably got dumped on us in late April. So it was pretty intense. And we never closed schools in Minneapolis, but when I was there this past year, I think we ended up closing like 4 times. We had a really bad winter. So anyways, that is Minnesota. Anybody been here before? So I always kind of laugh when people talk about making this a destination. It's a mall. If you haven't been there, it's a mall. It's a great mall, but I always laugh because people will make trips to Minnesota to go to the Mall of America. And my daughters, I have a daughter who's a senior, one of her friends who lives in Michigan, as his graduation gift, they're coming to Minnesota to go to the Mall of America. And so I thought, well, everybody has their opportunities, but it's really great. It's a great mall, great, they have the theme park inside, movies, and tons of shopping. So it's a great place to go if you get to Minnesota. Anybody know who he is? The first time I ever did karaoke, I sang a Prince song. I'll never do that again. But yes, this is Prince. Minnesota is the birthplace and the home of Prince. Musical genius and just an amazing man. Very quiet in terms of his philanthropy, but he has done so much in the community in Minnesota. His mom actually was a social worker at Minneapolis Public Schools for many years. Richard Green is his old high school, which is one of our elementary schools back home. That is a great man, and my dad actually used to play with his dad. So my dad was a road musician for a while, and so I got to meet a lot of folks associated with Prince and Time and all those folks. So great man, great music, and you'll know I love Prince, so you'll hear a lot about Prince probably. Anybody know who that is? Who that team is? Yay! Go Vikings! That's what you were supposed to say. So, somebody said Skol, right? And so we've got the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. That is our team. And I am a fair weather friend when it comes to sports. Actually, I'll just get this out right now. I actually am not a big sports person at all. I love watching sports. I don't know who the players are, what their stats are of any sport, but I enjoy watching football and basketball. I love it. I love watching hockey as well. So, but when I was leaving, one of my going away gifts, of course, was a Vikings jersey, and on the back, it's our new quarterback. So, just a funny story, again, to tell you how much I don't know sports. I've literally met many of the Vikings on multiple occasions, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. I had no idea who I was standing next to. So Adrian Peterson, for example, he and I built a playground together. And I was working next to him, and I had no idea who he was. And somebody said, did you get his autograph? I'm like, who? Adrian. Who's that? The guy you were working with all day. It's bad, really bad. So I got this as a going away gift, and everybody was laughing about it, and I couldn't figure out what the joke was. And then later on that evening, my wife tells me, well, you know, Keenum is now going to Denver, and he's their new quarterback. I'm like, oh, I get it now, I get it. So I was told to wear this jersey to my first Denver Broncos game to support Keenum. So, so that's what you know about me in terms of sports. And then lastly, this is my family. And my family means the world to me. I would not be where I'm at in my life without these three lovely ladies in my life. So my wife on the far end is Tamiko. Our youngest in the peach dress or coral dress, whatever, is Alana. And our oldest is Michaela. And Michaela is a senior this year, a rising senior. And our youngest will be a sophomore. And these three women run my life. And I've told this story a few times. Like, I have no say in my house. I've learned to say, that's exactly what I was thinking. You know, those kind of things. Any husbands here kind of probably know what that feels like. But when I was coming down here and looking for a place to stay, I was torn between two places. One was in the University Park area, I think it's called. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. And then the other one is out by Doherty. And I wanted to live in that University Park area because it was quiet and there was mountains and nature, which is something I absolutely love. And my daughters were saying, there's nothing to do around here. So I'm out on the west side, or no, the east side, by all Powers and all the shopping and dining and all that kind of stuff. So my daughters have something to do when they're down here. But 90% of the time, I'm going to be here by myself because our senior was not going to move her senior year. So my wife is staying back, holding down the fort with the two of them. So I thought, I'm in an apartment that means really nothing to me, but means the world to my daughters. So even outside of my house, I have no say in my house. So that is my family. And one of the things I share with folks is that, as I shared earlier, we spend a lot of time together. And I really strive to ensure that I find balance in my life. And I'm asking you all to do the same. You're no good here in D11 if you're not good at home. And so I really want to encourage us to be dedicated to what we do, but know whatever family is to you, that you keep that solid, you keep that close, and you protect that. Because that's what sustains you every single day, to be your best here at D11 as well. So that's my family, and that's a little bit about me personally. So why D11? Why did I even come here? And actually, the Gazette asked me that question yesterday when I was doing an interview with the Gazette. And I'll tell you, 20-some years ago, I met a young man named Reggie. He was a 10-year-old kid. And it was an after-school program at the YMCA. And Reggie was this young African-American boy who was going through some significant challenges in his life. And his home, if you will, was the Y. Every opportunity that Reggie had, he would come to the Y. So after school, he would do the after-school care. He'd be there on Saturdays. He'd be there on, school break days. Everything he wanted to do was always at the Y. And he had a really tough family situation. And one day when we were playing foosball, which we played every time that we got together, when we were done, Reggie made a comment and said, "Man, I wish I had a dad like you." And for me, it was one of those moments, which is the title of this presentation, Making the Most of Every Moment. It was one of those moments in my life that had I not taken advantage and seized that moment and that opportunity, I probably wouldn't be here today. Because Reggie literally changed my life. I was that kid. I was literally looking at a mini-me. And I had gone through very similar challenges in my life and had to find external support and outlets because I didn't necessarily have, that stability that I needed at home. And I had to ask myself, I was a pre-vet medicine major at that time, which who knows if that would have ever panned out as well. I was just kind of that young college kid really trying to figure out life and figure myself out. But what I knew is that I was using Reggie as a paycheck, and he was using me as a father figure. And I needed to get that right within myself. And so at that point, moving forward, I dedicated my life to serving and working with all the Reggies and the Reginas of the world. And I lost contact with Reggie. We kept in contact for many years. And Reggie eventually got, his family's rights got terminated, and he went into foster care. And at that point, I lost track. Reggie today, I'm trying to guesstimate, he's probably his late 30s. I have to believe Reggie is successful somewhere because he's just an amazing kid. And you all have met a Reggie or a Regina in your life that has probably impacted you immensely. And that moment turned into my movement in education. And I think that's the power of a moment. When you think about the moment that the president declared we're going to put a man on the moon, what happened with space technology? When Rosa Parks decided in a moment not to give up her seat, what kind of movement was started from that? Every moment has the power to turn into a massive movement that will create wonderful opportunities for folks. And Reggie was my moment. And Reggie is with me every single day of my life. He was like my firstborn. And just amazing guy. So I thought, what could I do in my life that will allow me to serve Reggie? And so I chose the field of social work. Because what I realized, and after what he went through, I could work with Reggie, but I also knew that if Reggie's family wasn't strong and supported, all of my work would be done in vain. And I also knew that if Reggie's family wasn't situated properly in getting the supports within the community, the family wouldn't do well. So social work allowed me to take that ecological lens, that systemic theory lens, and look at all the levels that impact an individual. And I came into education doing school-based mental health for African American youth in St. Paul Public Schools. Started a program called Project Kofi, which is an Afrocentric program working with kids identified with significant emotional challenges to prevent them from going into special education. And this is long before the school to prison pipeline research and long before all the disproportionality studies were coming out. We had a special ed director who had a vision for what was to come many, many years ago in St. Paul. So when I started this program, not only was I able to enact on my passion to serve within my own cultural community, the African American community, and young people that were like me to help be a role model, but I also understood the power of education. See, I started my career actually as a juvenile probation officer. Now, I was just having a conversation with my Uber driver when I was coming back into town on Sunday, who retired Army, and he works in corrections, the school-based facility where I think it just closed and it's moving down to, what's Pueblo? He's moving down to Pueblo now and starting a program there, or working in a program there. But I was sharing with him, I worked in probation for 2 years. And it was very clear to me, I'm on the wrong side of the spectrum. I had to figure out not how to save the baby, as you know, from the river. I wanted to prevent somebody from throwing babies in the river. So education for me was that opportunity to catch students at a time in their life where we could really affect change. And if you think about it, every single one of us, and I would dare to say everyone in this country, has to go through education, public education, or private, or some, you have to go through K-12 somewhere, right? So our schools are literally microcosms of this real world. And our classrooms are microcosms of the real world, the experiences that we have. So how could I shift that experience so that they could do well? And I found that in my program, as successful I was working with these students and their families, as soon as they went on to middle school and going back into the larger macro structure of public ed versus the safety net, if you will, of my program, they began to fail again. So I told myself, I need to get as high into the structure of public ed to affect governance, policy, economics, academics, you name it. I want to do very macro work. And so from that point forward, everything I did in my career was oriented around affecting macro change. That was my goal. I didn't want to just work with 16 to 30 students. I didn't want to just work in one school. I wanted to work where I could really help impact thousands of individual students and families. So I became, my first entree to central office work was leading racial equity work in a large suburban school system in Minnesota. Now, Minnesota isn't the most diverse state, but Minnesota has a tumultuous history with race relations, significant. Ever since the post-civil rights era, I was a product of one of the first waves of school desegregation in St. Paul. And they were going to start busing kids again in the 70s all over the place. My parents didn't want us bused. My dad lucked out, got a job at 3M, and they had a big site just outside of St. Paul in a first-ring suburb called Oakdale, and our family moved there. And they wanted to be in a community where they were going to potentially bus us. And I'll tell you, it was at that point that I recognized what it meant to be black, what it meant to be different, and unfortunately, what it meant to hate. And this is actually not what I intended to talk about this morning, but this is where I'm feeling compelled to share. I think it's really important because it really shapes a lot of who I am as a person, which is also my professional identity. But I always said, my brother and I doubled the diversity at Oakdale Elementary upon our enrollment. And it was a challenge to be one of few, or the only in many cases. My mom is also Polish and German, so I grew up in a biracial family. My dad's African American. And I had to negotiate my identity my entire life. And I literally would watch that happen in my family every single day. I watched my mom's family disown her for making a choice to marry a black man. I would literally go from kielbasa to collard greens in one holiday night. It was an amazing experience. And I learned a lot about negotiating one's identity. I was too black for my white friends. I was too white for my black friends. I mean, all these narratives, Zebra Boy, Salt and Pepper Baby, all these names I had to go through and manage and sift through. And again, not having the strongest support at home to help understand what all that meant. But again, thrown into public schools, that's where you work stuff out. That's life, right? So I had to negotiate that. And I'll never forget being put into SLBP. Does anybody in special ed who has been in SPED for a while remember SLBP? Okay, slow learning behavioral problems, okay? Now, we had a different name for that, and I won't share it, but if you were black or brown, you were in that program. And And we're not talking the 60s, folks. So I was literally put into a room outside of a main classroom where we had a two-way window, and I could see into the classroom and a sea of my white peers, and on the other side it was a mirror. And so all the black and brown students were in here. And I was in there for several years. And my 4th grade teacher, Mr. Moore, never forget him, told my parents one day at conferences, "You've got to get Michael out of this program. He's smart, he's brilliant, he's talented. He doesn't need to be in this program." And again, my parents, Dad, had to finish through night school because he got kicked out. Mom graduated, but didn't have a college degree, neither one of my parents. They didn't understand necessarily how to negotiate a large system like public education, So I was actually pulled out. And like a flip of the switch, I'm back in the mainstream classroom with everybody looking at me like, "Why are you here?" So I was that other kid, or Lisa Del Pitt's Other People's Children. That was me. I share that because that doesn't go away. That is a part of my lived history. That is a part of my story. I embrace that. I appreciate that. There was a reason for that. But it propelled me to really take action around a social justice equity framework in my life, personally as well as professionally. And so when I went out to ASIO, which is the first ring verb, going back to my professional piece, all of that came with me to lead integration efforts for a large suburban school system. And again, going through desegregation lawsuits still in the 90s from the NAACP suing the state of Minnesota in Minneapolis for redlining, and therefore schools are segregated by housing redline regulations. Very segregated state. Not unlike the East Coast, you got boroughs. They don't call them boroughs, but here's a track, here's a river, here's a highway. That's where folks go. And it was my job to help find ways to integrate our school systems, both with the urban core of Minneapolis Public Schools and 7 surrounding suburban school districts that were contiguous to the urban core. So that was the 90s. 2001, another revision of that. And then here we are, 2018, significant lawsuit, Cruz-Guzman, that's going through possibly the Supreme Court in Minnesota to this day around the same issue. So that's what my experience was coming into central admin. I also then went into back into a building as a school administrator. I was an elementary principal and a secondary principal of a 7-9 middle school, or junior high school we call them. Best job I ever had in my life. I loved being a principal. And I will be very transparent. I have a bias about principals. Because it's once you become one, you can't take that off. Something happens to you. I don't know what it is. But it really transforms you and transforms how you think. And I will tell you, I believe principals have the best job in the world. And why is that, Michael? That is because if I, as a superintendent, want to enact some level of change in our school system, guess who can make it or break it? If the community and our families want to enact some level of change and push something forward in our schools, who do they have to talk to? Our principals, right? And the principals in this room know it's a very lonely job. Would you agree? I mean, you're kind of out there on your own. And the culture in a variety of districts that I've been in with principals is that you don't necessarily ask questions a whole lot because you don't want people to think that you don't know what you're doing, right? Maybe it's just me. I'll own it for me. But I saw a few head nods. But that was my world for 6 years. And I absolutely loved it. Did some amazing work with my staff. At the elementary level, really addressing a lot of EL and multilingual. I had almost 70% of my students were ELL students. And at the junior high level, coming in, highest performing junior high in the district, but one of the most significant racial disparities in academic achievement in the district. So on the whole, and on the front side, we were the best. But when I pushed my staff to say, but what if you look like me? That's where it got kind of ugly, right? So we did a lot of gap closure work at that school as well. So some amazing work. And then I had an opportunity to come into Minneapolis Public Schools. And Minneapolis is the third largest school system in the state. And it's a very dense, concentrated urban district that you would find probably somewhat similar to Denver, although there are, what, 90,000 some students? So not as big, but clearly had significant challenges and issues in there. And I always tell people it was like working in the ER. You were on 24/7. A lot of things happening in our district. But it was a great opportunity, great experiences, and I think it truly helped me understand a very fast-paced macro system that would allow me to be successful as I grew in my career. Which brings me here to Colorado Springs. And the irony is that 7 years ago, when my mother-in-law retired from teaching from 35 some years of teaching, she said, I want to go whitewater rafting as a gift, as a celebration, right? None of us had ever been whitewater rafting before. And I was just having this conversation with Dave, actually, the other day. And we all came down here, my extended family, and we were Royal Gorge. Royal Gorge is where we went. And it was an amazing trip. So if you've not been whitewater rafting, you definitely got to try it. And my wife's family's from California, and we've always wanted to move back to the West Coast, and but not to California. And no offense if you're from California, but wasn't trying to go back there. And we said, wow, this is an amazing place. We were here for a week, did all kinds of stuff. The weather was great. And we said, we could live here, right? So who knew 7 years later there would be an opportunity to serve as a superintendent here in D11. And that was part of the reason of coming here. But as I was sharing with the Gazette yesterday, my professional career isn't about making a name for myself. It's not about building a resume. It's not about any kind of accolades. It's about really stepping into or leaning into my purpose. And that's something that you're going to hear a lot about today. I don't do this because it's a job. I do this because I was called to do this many years ago when Reggie was placed in my life. And everything and anything I do needs to align to that. So when I looked at the district, looked at the board, watched many board meetings to understand kind of where their governance direction was, meeting with many folks in the community on my own prior to even coming through an interview process, I felt there's an alignment here that I think my background and experiences would connect. And that's what made me go through the process of becoming your superintendent. And I am just thrilled to be here. And coming in this past month has just been daily affirmation that I'm walking every day in my purpose here in D11. And I'm just excited for what is to come. So that's a little bit about me personally and professionally. So let me kind of shift a little bit here and push some thinking your way now for the day. So some guiding questions here. I want you all to be thinking about alignment. I know that we all have a variety of different jobs, but I want you to understand that you cannot be successful in your silo. It will feel like you're successful, but collectively it will not be successful. So how will we ensure that we're going to stay aligned? Priorities. Everything can't be a priority. I've experienced that in different opportunities I've had in my life. If everything's a priority, there is no priority, right? So how do you ensure that the priorities that we have, whether it's in our schools or our departments, are truly the focus of what you are declaring you're going to do to our community? And I'll talk a little bit later about this, but it's that scope, right? You have to stay narrow and deep. And the world is going to want you to go wide and shallow. How many of you experienced that? They want you to do 1,000 things and do enough to be dangerous just so you can check the box and say, I did it, right? So think about that. And then lastly, this whole notion of continuous improvement. How are we going to be held accountable to ourselves and to our colleagues and to this community? Those are some of the guiding questions I want you to be thinking about this morning. Outcomes. I've made these very personal because I want you all to not only think collectively about your teams, but your role on your team. So I want you to understand, the organizational culture within D11. What it is, what it isn't, and what it should be, or what it could be. Understanding that collective accountability, okay? And I would add, Dr. Fink, University of Washington, talks a lot about reciprocal accountability, right? So irrespective of roles and our positions within the organization, there's a reciprocal nature to those relationships. It doesn't matter that I'm the superintendent. You all need to hold me accountable just as much as I would hold you accountable. And those of you that I've met during my transition week, this is a little test. There was 3 things I asked you to do. Does anybody remember any of the 3 things?
Ask questions.
Ask questions.
Challenge. Push back.
Push back. And challenge decisions that are being made. And I don't care who's making them. And I asked you all that. And why is that important to me? It keeps me accountable. It keeps me grounded. And it keeps me humble. I'm just one person. And like I told the Gazette, I don't wear a red cape and I don't have an S on my chest. Right? None of us do. But collectively, we're going to do great things together. So when you think about organizational culture and applying that whole notion of learning to that, the research will show around organizational development 4 kind of dominant areas of culture. And the first is a clan organizational culture, okay? That family-like. Second is adhocracy. And this is more that dynamic, kind of visionary, risk-taking. We have a market culture, results-oriented, the bottom line. And then we have hierarchy, more of a controlling, autocratic way of stabilizing systems. So when you think about these 4 organizational cultures that Cameron and Quinn have put together back from the late 80s, actually, which has still carried forward, where do you assess D11 to be? So just take the next minute, turn to a neighbor, and talk a little bit about where you assess D11 to be within an organizational culture. Four, 3, 2, and 1. So, who's brave and willing? Talk a little bit about D11. Because what do I know? I've only been here a month. What's our organizational culture? What, just given this research, anybody want to just shout out? What's your
Hierarchy.
Hierarchy. Okay. Anybody want to expound on what they mean? Because there are several of you that said that. Why are you assessing D11 to be in a hierarchical? Anybody? Structure? The structure of the organization?
Positional-based authority.
Positional-based authority. Silos. Our board goals emphasize efficiency. Okay? Ideally, an organization in its life cycle will embody a variety of these aspects, right? I think they're all necessary at certain times. You may not necessarily always live in one quadrant. I would tell you my experience in education has also probably affirmed many districts that I've worked with or experienced have a hierarchy nature to them. And I would say that every place I've been also is in love with organizational charts. Just my experience. You're going to learn very quickly that though I understand the tenets of a hierarchical organization and the need for an organizational chart, that just is a fallback if we need to bring some clarity around things for me. The reason why in my transition week I was very deliberate, and I've said this ever since I was a principal, ask questions, push back, challenge decisions I make, is to help tear down a hierarchical feel. Now, many of you, and this happened with my staff, aren't going to believe that. You're going to be afraid of that. There's going to be retribution for doing that. All those things. But you'll just have to build that trust over time. But I'm giving it to you as your superintendent. I'm giving that to you. I'm asking that of you. I will not be effective here. I think collectively we can be effective here. But this is not where I'm going to stay. So my focus around organizational culture really is going to be around learning. And that's what public education is about, if you think about it. Why do we exist? To ensure that our students learn at the highest levels. And if that is our outcome, that's the product we have to deliver using a more business mindset, then how do we make the culture aligned to our outcome? And that is to create a learning organization and declaring that D11 is all about learning. And I'm going to walk through this a little bit because this is where I live. And this is where I'm asking you all to join me and kind of live here for a while. A learning organization has a supportive learning environment, not just in our classrooms and our schools, across the entire system. Every aspect, this room is about learning. My outcomes are learning targets, just like you would see a teacher do in a classroom. I am modeling what our teachers do every single day to inspire folks to embrace new learning, to push and grow them to their best. We're no different than our kids. So a supportive learning environment is about creating psychological safety. And I talked a little bit about this a second ago when I said, you'll have to trust me when I ask you to push back, ask questions, and challenge decisions that I make. It's not psychologically safe to do that, I'm guessing, okay? Because of what has maybe happened in the past. And so you're going to reserve yourself. That will be established over time, and you all assessing trust with me over time, that I'm trying to create that psychological safe place that you can be your whole self, your authentic, true self. Appreciation of differences. Are we going to all agree all the time? If that happened, we'd be lying to ourselves, right? So we have to make sure that we appreciate and actually are intentional to invite difference into the conversation. Any of you know Anthony Muhammad, Transforming School Cultures? Okay, a lot of work with Solution Tree and whatnot. But he talks about believers, tweeners, and fundamentalists, right? Believers are the folks that they love you. They're on board. They're gonna jump on that bandwagon in a minute. Fundamentalists are the folks who are like, not happening. As gas, this too shall pass, right? They wait it out. I've been here 20 years. We're going to get a new principal. We're going to get a new superintendent. That's a fundamentalist. And then you got those tweeners. And they can go either way. They go either way. And believe it or not, you need a fundamentalist in a healthy organization, right? Every good story, every good movie has a nemesis, right? There's always the bad person. And the bad person helps the good person make them look even better, right? So you got to have that. Openness to new ideas. This is a challenge, particularly for educators. Now, I always tell the joke, how many educators does it take to change a light bulb? What? Change? We would much rather sit in the dark than to put a new light bulb in and to see something new. So we have to be open to new ideas, right? As humans, we are not static beings. We are organic in nature. We are constantly evolving. Who I was yesterday is not necessarily who I am today. And our learners, our students, our families, they are no different. So if we're not able to be responsive to their needs and be open to new ways of doing things, we will become a static organization. Failure is success inside out. We cannot be afraid to fail, because we're going to. Let's just put that on the table right now. Every one of us in this room is going to fail at some point in this year. Now, if you are not in a psychologically safe environment, failing will be punitive. And I am not going to punish folks for failing. Now, repeated failure is a different story, right? Because when we fail, we should take the time to reflect, understand what has happened, engage in some knowledge transfer with my colleagues or my supervisor, and improve my practice to not fail again. It's about the mood we create. And this is taken from Julio Olala's work. He's with Newfield Coaching. And he talks about organizational mood, and he also talks about how that can be, an individual's mood as well. And when you think about mood, I want you to consider kind of this little Punnett square here. You can reject or accept facts and possibility in our work, in your own life. So when you think about rejecting facts, the mood from doing that is going to be that of resentment. And if you stay there, that's going to be a very unhealthy mood for the organization or you as an individual leader. And if you reject that something could be different, that there's another possible alternative or outcome, your mood will be that of resignation. You check out, you flatline, I'm done. Or as my students will say, Mr. Thomas, I'm not feeling this. Okay? They check out. So, very unhealthy in that rejection state. And we're trying to push and create that tension for folks to accept certain experiences that happen. So, going back to that data, you can at least accept the facts. Sharing in my personal story, I could be resentful and check out about the experience I had growing up very easily. But that doesn't change the fact that it's part of my story. So at some point, I have to come to peace and come to terms with, this is what I experienced as a kid. This is what D11 is experiencing for our students and our families. It is what it is. No valuation on it. Now, we have to ask ourselves, if this is okay, then do nothing. But if we really want to be the district of choice, we've got to accept possibility. Because when you accept that something could be different, your mood is that of ambition. And if you think about this from an exercise standpoint, as we talked about earlier, this is like your active, your at-rest heart rate. This is when you're pushing yourself on that treadmill or running. Now, you don't always want to be there, okay, running at your target heart rate. You have to take time to bring it back down and reflect, as we talked about, okay? Ambition is something like a cycle, but that's where we want to be. We want to embrace the fact that there are possibilities. We also know that recently we just passed the mill levy, right? Huge opportunity. 17 years, I believe, it's been since our community has said, here's our financial belief in D11. And I want to temper our excitement around that, because it's not like we just won the Powerball and we have all this money, we're going to buy mansions and fancy cars, right? We have to be great stewards of public resources and ensure this year we have a strong focus on delivering what we promised our community. Because we're at a real fine tipping point here in D11. We are losing roughly 300 some students every single year in this district. We're losing our market share. So families are choosing other districts, choosing charters, whatever it might be, but we want to be the district of choice for our families. And part of that comes from our community trusting that when they send their child to a D11 school, they're going to receive the best and be their best. And part of that comes with our ability to demonstrate our commitment and delivery to the promises that we had within the mill levy override. For this year, I really wanted to bring a little bit of a focus that ties to a lot of what we've had right here as well. The first will be to engage our public, internal stakeholders as well, around a strategic plan for 2019 and beyond. I've pulled strategic plans in D11 since the 90s and reviewed them all. Not surprisingly, they're very similar. Okay? And we have an opportunity in D11 to develop a comprehensive plan that the people buy into, if you will. This is not going to be Michael's plan. This has to be something that we effectively work with our internal and external stakeholders to buy into and help create so they can see themselves and own this work. We need to enact our declared mill levy goals. That's going to be a strong focus point to ensure that we don't lose trust at a critical time in D11's history. Also, developing a comprehensive marketing campaign and plan. We need to be able to tell our story in D11 and the successes that are happening. Because our parents are talking about D11. Our partners are talking about D11. They have an opinion. The Gazette writes about D11. As does the Independent and other media outlets, right? But we want to be the owners and the authors of those stories. We have the power of the pen in our leadership to create our story, and that's going to be a significant emphasis. Increasing our data literacy and implementation science, and utilizing implementation science. Data needs to drive everything we do. Again, I can't stress that enough. We can't leave it to chance. And leveraging implementation science, when we get something like the mill levy passed, or if there's some kind of directive that comes through governance, they expect the outcomes to be immediate. Okay? It's not going to happen. We're not going to move the needle significantly in 1 year. It takes time to really fully implement an initiative. Developing a multi-tiered system of support framework as well as a social-emotional learning framework. These two elements are critical. And I know we've got folks in our system right now who are behind the scenes doing a lot of this work on developing a multi-tiered system of support. And then lastly, an SEL framework. Part of what we're talking about is school safety and security in our MLO, and that is going back to that learning organization, that psychological safe environment. That is what this is going to be about. And how do we ensure that we are creating that space for our students and our staff in D11? Those are going to be some of the focus points that I want us to consider as we move forward in this current year.
I hope you enjoyed what you heard, because it deeply matters to me that we are oriented around our students and really allowing them to reach their full potential. I can't thank you enough for the work that you're going to do this year, and again, just honored to serve as your superintendent. Let's make this the best year ever for our students and families in District 11. Have a great year.